It started as a routine traffic stop on a quiet evening. At least, that's what the two officers thought. When they pulled over a sleek black sedan for a minor infraction, they had no idea who they were dealing with. The driver, a well-dressed black man, remained calm as they approached, but something about his demeanor made them pause. He wasn't nervous like most people during a stop. In fact, he seemed almost amused. As one officer asked for his license and registration, the other scanned the car, noting the man's expensive suit and confident posture. Then they saw the badge. Not just any badge. This was the Chief of Internal Affairs. Their boss's boss. A man with the power to investigate them. Suddenly, the air shifted. Did they just make a career-ending mistake? But what happened next was something no one could have expected, and it left everyone speechless. The two officers exchanged quick glances, their grip tightening on their belts. The Chief of Internal Affairs sat still, his hands resting on the steering wheel, watching their every move. His badge gleamed under the dim streetlights, but neither officer reached for it. Instead, one cleared his throat. "Sir, do you know why we pulled you over?" His voice was steady, but there was an edge to it, uncertainty mixed with tension. The chief tilted his head slightly, studying them. "I'd like to hear it from you," he replied, his tone calm yet commanding. The officers hesitated. This wasn't just another traffic stop. Every word, every action could mean something bigger. Was this a test? Had they unknowingly walked into a situation that could change everything? The second officer, shifting uncomfortably, glanced at the chief's trunk. "Mind if we take a look inside?" he asked. That's when things took an unexpected turn. The chief's expression didn't change. He exhaled slowly, then gave a small nod. "Go ahead," he said, his voice even. He reached into his pocket, deliberately, carefully, and pulled out a key, handing it over. The officer hesitated before taking it, exchanging another glance with his partner. Something about this felt off, but neither of them could back out now. The trunk popped open, and a dim glow from the car's taillights revealed neat stacks of files and documents piled inside. The officer frowned, flipping through them. Official reports, case files, confidential information. His stomach tightened. This wasn't the kind of thing you expected to find in the back of a car during a routine stop. Meanwhile, the chief watched them closely. "Find what you're looking for?" he asked, his voice edged with something unreadable. The officers felt the weight of the moment. They had started this stop in control. Now they weren't so sure. The officer's hands tightened around the files as he flipped through them, his pulse quickening. These weren't just random documents. Some of the names and cases were all too familiar. Internal investigations, disciplinary actions, complaints against officers. The realization hit him like a punch to the gut. These files weren't just important, they were dangerous. His partner must have realized the same thing because his posture stiffened. "Sir, why do you have these?" he asked, his voice more cautious now. The chief leaned against the car, folding his arms, his gaze steady. "I'd ask you the same thing," he replied smoothly. "Why are you so interested in what's in my trunk?" The street felt eerily quiet. The officer holding the files swallowed hard, exchanging another glance with his partner. They had been the ones questioning the chief, but now it felt like they were the ones being investigated. And then the chief took a step closer. The officers tensed as the chief stepped forward, his presence commanding. The silence stretched between them, thick with unspoken tension. Then, just as one officer opened his mouth to speak, the radio on his shoulder crackled to life. A voice came through, urgent. "All units, priority alert. Be on the lookout for a black sit-in, possible security breach involving classified documents." Their blood ran cold. The description matched the chief's car exactly. The officer holding the files felt his grip tighten. His partner instinctively reached for his radio, but the chief raised a hand, stopping him. "You might want to think carefully before you call that in," he said, his voice low but firm. The officers exchanged a look. This wasn't just about a traffic stop anymore. This was something bigger, something they weren't prepared for. Was the chief involved in something illegal? Or was he being set up? Before they could process it, headlights appeared in the distance, approaching fast. The officers' hands hovered near their holsters as the approaching vehicle sped toward them. Its headlights flashed once, almost like a signal, before it screeched to a stop just a few feet away. The doors swung open, and two men in dark suits stepped out. No badges, no uniforms, just cold, unreadable expressions. One of them spoke first. "Chief, we need to take you with us." His tone was firm, but there was something unsettling about it. The officers exchanged a look. Who were these men? The chief didn't flinch. Instead, he exhaled slowly and nodded. "I was expecting this," he muttered, almost to himself. Then turning back to the officers, he gave them a measured look. "Gentlemen, you might want to remember everything that just happened tonight. You're going to need the truth." Before either officer could respond, the men in suits stepped in, taking control. As they escorted the chief into their car, the trunk of his sedan still open, the officers realized they had uncovered something far bigger than a traffic stop. But the real question remained: whose side was the chief really on? The officers stood frozen as the black car carrying the chief disappeared into the night. The air felt heavier now, like they had just witnessed something they weren't meant to see. The files were still in the open trunk, pages rustling in the breeze. One officer hesitated before shutting it, his mind racing. What had they just stumbled into? His partner exhaled sharply, shaking his head. "Do we report this?" he asked, but neither of them had an answer. Would anyone even believe them? And more importantly, who could they trust? As they got back into their patrol car, the radio crackled again with routine updates, as if nothing had happened. But they both knew the truth. Tonight was anything but routine. Whatever the chief was involved in, it wasn't over. And as they drove off, a single thought lingered in their minds. Had they just let a hero walk away, or a man with too many secrets?